What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We've got a loaded show for you today with some major updates heading into UFC 324 next week. We're talking potential super fights, controversial suspensions, and Paddy Pimblett firing shots at basically everyone. Before we dive in, make sure to leave a like on this video to help support the channel. It really does make a difference for us. Alright, let's get into it. So, Arman Tsarukyan just announced he's entering training camp, and the timing is interesting. Last night, Arman posted a photo on his Instagram story with Demetrius Johnson and wrote, "From the jet to the gym with the GOAT, camp starts now." Now, here's where it gets tricky for the UFC matchmakers. Arman just beat the number 6 ranked guy at lightweight, but everyone ranked 2 through 5 is already booked for fights. The lightweight division is absolutely stacked right now, so finding the right opponent for him isn't going to be easy. The UFC could match him with someone outside the top 5, but that doesn't really make sense for a guy who's clearly ready for a top contender. They could also have him wait for one of those scheduled fights to play out, but we all know how Arman feels about sitting on the sidelines. He's been pretty vocal about wanting to stay active. Next up, let's talk about Magomed Ankalaev, or Big Ank, as everyone calls him. This one's kind of funny, actually. Fans in the MMA community started pointing out that Magomed has been completely silent on social media since his loss to Alex Pereira. Before that fight, he was all over Twitter, calling people out left and right, talking a big game. Then he loses to Pereira, and suddenly nothing. Complete radio silence. Well, those comments must have reached either Magomed or his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, because a couple days after fans started roasting him about it, he popped back up on social media with a post saying, "I'm back. Who you guys want to see me fight next?" And you can probably imagine what the replies looked like. Most people are just making fun of the fact that this is probably Ali tweeting for him, not actually Magomed. But jokes aside, the UFC doesn't seem interested in booking a trilogy fight between him and Pereira. That ship has sailed, so the question is, who? Makes sense for Ankalaev at this point? He's still a top contender at light heavyweight, even with 2 losses to Pereira. Let us know in the comments who you think the UFC should book him against next. Now, we need to talk about Mohammed Usman, and this is a rough one. Back in October, we reported that Mohammed Usman, who is Kamaru Usman's brother, got pulled from his fight at UFC Rio because of elevated testosterone levels. We finally got the official update last night, and it's not good. Combat Sports Anti-Doping revealed that Usman accepted a 2-year and 6-month suspension. But here's what makes this worse. The agency also said that Usman engaged in deceptive and obstructive conduct to avoid the adjudication process. That's a fancy way of saying he tried to cover it up and lie about it. Let me read you part of their official statement because the details matter here. Usman tested positive for testosterone, which is a prohibited substance in the class of anabolic agents, from an out-of-competition sample collected on September 8, 2025 in Coral Springs, Florida. His suspension started on October 9, 2025, which was the day he got notified of the positive test, pulled from the Rio card, and provisionally suspended. The suspension runs until April 9, 2028. Now here's the part that really stands out. While Usman eventually took responsibility, he didn't do it in a timely fashion. He only came clean after the agency confronted him with evidence they collected during their investigation into his use of multiple prohibited substances. They also found that he attempted to deceive them with a false explanation. Usually, aggravating circumstances like that can double a standard suspension, but because Usman eventually admitted to everything, they determined that adding 6 months to the standard 2-year suspension was appropriate instead of doubling it entirely. This brings up a bigger question that I want to hear your thoughts on. Do you think fighters who get popped for performance-enhancing drugs should be automatically cut from the roster? Some people say yes, 1 strike and you're out. Others think fighters deserve a second chance, especially if they're honest about it. But when you've got a case like this, where the fighter actively tried to cover it up, that changes things. Drop your opinion in the comments below. And to wrap up the quick UFC updates, Alex Pereira posted some training footage yesterday with a 6'8" heavyweight from Brazil named Wesley Duza. Now, this could be nothing. Fighters train with guys from all different weight classes all the time, but people are already speculating whether this means Pereira is thinking about moving up to heavyweight. I don't know about that one. Pereira has already moved up from middleweight to light heavyweight and became champion. Moving to heavyweight would be insane, even for him. But then again, this is Alex Pereira we're talking about. The guy seems to enjoy proving people wrong. Alright, now let's get into the big story that has everyone talking. Merab Dvalishvili just leaked that Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev might happen sooner than anyone expected. The question of whether Ilia can stop Islam's dominant run has been debated endlessly in the MMA community. You've got fans split right down the middle on this one. Ilya's striking is absolutely elite, some of the best we've seen in the featherweight division. But Islam's grappling is also elite, arguably the best in the lightweight division right now. So who wins, the striker or the grappler? We might find out sooner than we think. Merab came out in a new interview and was asked to create his perfect UFC card. He said Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. Pretty straightforward answer. But then the interviewer asked whether he thinks that fight will ever actually happen. And Merab's response got interesting. He said, "I know some details from Ilya. It might happen sooner than we imagine. That's not just speculation. That's someone with inside information, hinting that conversations are already happening behind the scenes." Now, here's where the matchmaking gets complicated. Dana White recently said that fans want to see the winner of Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett fight Ilia Topuria. But then he immediately followed that up by saying, "We'll see how it plays out throughout the year." When Dana says something like that, it usually means plans might change. It seems like if Paddy wins next week at UFC 324, the UFC wants to book Ilia versus Paddy. That's a massive fight, especially with Paddy's popularity in the UK. But if Justin Gaethje wins, things could go in a completely different direction. There's a real possibility that Ilya vacates the featherweight belt and moves up to lightweight to fight Islam Makhachev. If that happens, Justin is hoping that Max Holloway beats Charles Oliveira at UFC 325 and successfully defends the BMF belt. Then Justin would want to face Max at the White House event for both the vacant lightweight title and the BMF belt at the same time. If everything lines up that way, we could potentially see both Islam versus Ilya and Justin versus Max at the White House card. That would be absolutely massive. But hold on, because a reputable source close to Ilya came out and said the UFC has no plans to strip him of his featherweight title. If that's true, then the fight between Justin and Max would only be for the BMF belt and possibly an interim lightweight title, not the undisputed championship. Alvaro Cormino, who's connected to Topuria's camp, said this: "The UFC is not going to strip Ilya. They're going to give him all the time necessary. If for some reason they have to have an interim title defense, they would allow it. They have a lot of faith in Topuria's current status as a star." That tells you how much the UFC values Ilya right now. They're willing to be flexible with the divisions to accommodate whatever fight makes sense for him. Going back to Merab for a second, he had incredibly high praise for Ilya after spending time training with him in Spain. Merab said, "Regarding the fight against Ilya and Islam Makhachev, I've become convinced that Ilya is a phenomenal athlete. I've never felt that kind of power or that level of technique from anyone else, whether it's jiu-jitsu, wrestling, everything. That kind of uniqueness, the feeling I get with Ilya, I haven't gotten with anyone else. He has a very big chance against Islam Makhachev. I became convinced of that once again now that I've returned from Spain. I would give a higher percentage to Ilya even if the fight takes place at welterweight." Coming from Merab, who's trained with some of the best fighters in the world, that's a serious endorsement. And speaking of Merab, Dana White also praised him recently for his activity and reliability. In an interview, Dana said, "The guy's an animal. He's 100% one of the most reliable fighters we have. I could call him from this interview right now and tell him I want him to fight on the second Paramount card, and he'd do it." Merab hasn't booked his next fight yet, probably because he's waiting for a rematch with Peter Yan. But there's a chance the UFC is keeping that option open to see if Sean O'Malley can beat Song Yadong in less than 2 weeks. If Sean wins, they might set up Sean versus Petter at the White House event instead. UFC definitely needs American stars for that card. And let's be honest, a rematch between Petter and Merab isn't as exciting as Petter versus Sean O'Malley. So here's my question for you. Should Merab get an instant rematch after defending his title 4 times? Or should the UFC go with the bigger star in O'Malley for the White House event? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. All right, Conor McGregor drama time. Yesterday, completely out of nowhere, Dana White went on an interview and basically said that Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is not happening at UFC White House, and that the fight is old news at this point. Now, most people would probably agree with that statement. The hype for that fight has definitely died down since they were coaches on The Ultimate Fighter. But you've got to feel bad for Michael Chandler. The guy has waited years for a Conor-sized payday. He's stayed super consistent calling Conor out over the last 2 years, never wavering. And it seemed like Conor was still down for the fight too. He was poking fun at Chandler just a few days ago while calling out Floyd Mayweather. But now Conor reacted to Dana's interview with a tweet that he later deleted. He wrote, "Pick who you want. The Max sweats nothing and nobody. I'm tasty shots." Classic Conor. Not making a ton of sense, but still sounding confident. Here's the thing though. Dana is known for playing mind games and throwing fans off the scent when big fights are being finalized. He likes to deny things and then surprise everyone with an official announcement. He's already said he'll begin matchmaking for the White House card after UFC 325 on January 31st, so come February, the announcements will start rolling in. Whether Conor versus Chandler actually happens or not, we'll just have to wait and see. But right now, Dana wants everyone to believe it's old news and nobody cares anymore. In reality, though, most people do want to see Conor fight at least one more time before he retires. And Chandler, who's 2-3 in the UFC, is pretty much the perfect opponent for him at this stage. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think Conor versus Chandler is actually old news? Or would you still watch that fight? And if Conor does return, who should he fight instead? With UFC 324 happening next week, most of the fighters are already in Vegas, getting their final training sessions in. Yesterday, Paddy Pimblett did an open workout and spoke to the media afterwards at the UFC Apex. During the interview, Paddy doubled down on his prediction that he's going to knock out Justin Gaethje, and he made it clear he has no plans of taking the fight to the ground. But if it does end up there, Paddy says he's confident he can out-wrestle Justin. He said, once we're down, he's not getting back up. I know he's a very good scrambler. He's got very good wrestling, but people underestimate my wrestling and underestimate my scrambling. People think I can't wrestle, which makes me laugh. No one thought I was going to take Michael Chandler down and drop him on his head, though we'll see what happens. I'm not even planning on taking him down. I want to knock him out. I'm going to come out and strike with him. Then Paddy said something interesting about the perception of this fight. He said, I know people are calling it a grappler versus striker fight, but it's not. There's a very big gulf in class when it comes to the grappling and striking, but there's not much of a gulf in class when it comes to striking. Everyone thinks he's just going to pick me apart on the feet, and he's going to be better on the feet. And I'm going to show everyone the difference between a striker with boxing and leg kicks and an MMA striker, because that's what I am. That's Paddy basically saying Justin might have cleaner technique, but Paddy believes his MMA striking is more well-rounded and effective in a cage fight. Paddy also had some words for Arman Tsarukyan, and he did not hold back. He said it annoys him that people keep saying he's ducking Arman when, according to Paddy, he was never even offered that fight in the first place. He said, that's annoying to me. People are saying you're ducking Arman. I've never been offered to fight Arman. If I ever was offered to fight Arman, I would have punched his head in by now. He irritates me. I think he's an absolute helmet. I'd fight Arman in a heartbeat. Paddy then went on to say that if Ilya can't come back by July, the UFC needs to strip him because he's slowing down the entire division. Paddy said he'd defend the belt against Arman, Max Holloway, or Charles Oliveira. He doesn't care who it is. In another interview with Main Event TV, Paddy went even further, saying that Arman's grappling is overrated. He said, I hope I eventually fight Arman because I want to shut him up. He's a little idiot. I'd love to beat him up. Everyone thinks his grappling is unbelievable, but I don't think it's that good at all. If you can't submit Charles Oliveira, who's a striker who can't grapple, then I don't think your grappling is that good at all. Before he fought Dan Hooker, I thought Arman might be a tougher fight for me, stylistically, than Ilya. But after watching that fight, he's not. Ilya is a much tougher fight. It didn't take long for Arman to see those comments. He fired back on Threads, writing, actions speak louder than words. We'll see when the time comes, you fat, alongside a photo of Paddy. So yeah, there's definitely some bad blood building there. And finally, let's wrap this up with a quick Nick Diaz update. Nick recently celebrated 1 year of sobriety and got out of rehab, which is awesome to see. And now it looks like he got married to his longtime girlfriend, Kayla. We don't have a ton of details on that yet, but there's video circulating of what appears to be a wedding celebration. Nick also met up with Sean Strickland for the first time, and Sean had a pretty cool reaction. He wrote in the comments, I remember being a little kid in the living room in boxers watching him scrap in Strikeforce. Legend. In the video, Sean is clearly starstruck meeting Nick, telling him how he used to watch him fight when he was younger. It's a cool full-circle moment for Sean, who's now a former UFC middleweight champion, meeting one of his childhood heroes. And that'll wrap up our video today. Before you go, I want to know your thoughts on that potential Ilya versus Islam fight. Do you think Ilya's striking can overcome Islam's grappling, or does Islam dominate him the same way he's dominated everyone else at lightweight? Drop your answer in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. We'll see you all tomorrow with more UFC updates.